This episode of Dialing Up the Details has been pre recorded for the holiday season. Let's get into it. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Dialing Up the Details. I want you to imagine for a second, if you will, you're a 911 dispatcher. You take a call, it's for someone's 15-year-old son that has taken his life. You coach through CPR, you listen to the wailing and crying of the parents as they know they've just lost a child. It's heavy. There's a lot of moving parts to it. You page out the fire department to assist EMS. You make sure the ambulance is on the way. You have officers on the way to not only assist with the investigation, but get a hold of our crime victims advocate so that way they can get all the counseling they need. Um, you have the police on the way to see if maybe possibly they can help if they're in the area and they're a little closer. Maybe they can do something. So everyone involved at this point is going to be exposed and in full view of this. It's not an easy call. It's probably, you know, some people's worst nightmares. I mean, it definitely is for the family that had the loss. It is their worst nightmare. Then imagine directly after that, without skipping a beat, as soon as that call's done, as the call taker, you're taking another call for a neighbor complaining about another neighbor's dog barking, and they're calling you names. They're saying that they pay your salary. They are doing everything they can to absolutely berate you and let you know that you are absolutely below them and that you work for them and that your attitude should be perfect, even if it's not. They are telling you it has to be perfect. Why are you being rude? Why are you in an emotional state? And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the empathy budget, what it means, and possibly how to help yourselves along if you're a first responder. Let's get into it. So, welcome back, guys. Like I said, this episode's going to be pre-recorded. I have went ahead and made this recording, so that way I can get it out this week, and then next week on the holidays, I will not be having a podcast. Well, depending on timing, I may or may not have a special episode. But for the foreseen future, I will not have an episode next week. So be sure to be safe around the holidays. Also, this episode design and what I was wanting to talk about kind of goes into how I'm feeling during the holidays and how a lot of first responders and what they deal with during the holiday season because seasonal depression is a real thing for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. So I wanted to talk about that and kind of what I've been dealing with lately. Um, I understand, a lot of what I'm going to go into is things that I've noticed or seen on social media. I understand that social media, number one, is not real. People are just absolutely horrible to be absolutely horrible. Um, I also know that my feelings really do not matter. Like they don't matter. The job still has to be done. There's things that still need to be taken care of. So my feelings do not matter, and every first responder will tell you that is that at some point they're going to feel that as well, and the fact that it doesn't matter what they're feeling, they have to continue and move on. And my feelings do not dictate how you act. The thing I want to bring up in this episode is maybe people that either aren't a first responder or have regular meetings with first responders, whether that's ambulance, fire, EMS, whatever. ambulance, fire, EMS. You guys know what I mean. Ambulance, fire, police, EMS, fire, police, whatever. Um, give them an inside look as to maybe what that person's dealing with and why sometimes, not all the time, some are just too far gone and too burnt out to ever make a change. But sometimes when you come across a first responder that may be rude or not acting exactly the way that you feel they should, it's because they're dealing with their own stuff. They've ran out of their empathy budget. They have the tanks running it on fumes at this point, and hopefully that helps some people understand that us as humans need to give each other a little bit of grace every once in a while. On any side of the field you're on, um, humans deserve a little bit of grace every once in a while. And for the most part, the holiday season should reinforce that and should, to me, that's what it's about. Family togetherness, reminding that we could all use a little more empathy and um, peace and joy through mankind, right? And that's something that we could all use and something that is, I think, severely depleted in today's world. No longer can we have conversations. No longer can we have a difference of opinion and still get along. Everybody is against everybody for one way or another. So we're going to kind of run into that and just mention some of the things I've noticed and seen lately. So the main thing on this is we're going to be talking about the empathy budget. So the idea of an empathy budget is you start off with a certain amount in the tank or a certain amount of budget. So let's say your budget is, well, let me put it this way. Let's say your budget is 300 bucks, okay? Each super heavy or tragic call or something that takes a lot of resources that you're having to put together or use a lot of exertion mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever, is going to take more of your budget. So calls like that are going to be 100 bucks. Your calls like barking dogs or um, suspicious people in the fact that there's a Karen calling in on them, or a fence dispute between neighbors, or their grass is too high. They violated a city ordinance, but they want the officers to take care of it, kind of thing. Those things are going to take, generally, generally, they're going to take less of the budget. What ramps that up, though, is if you just spend $100 and then you take one of those calls, it's going to be, versus spending your $10, you're going to be spending $50. So what I want you guys to visualize here is a budget of $300 for your empathy, right? And like I said, those heavy calls are going to be 100 bucks. The smaller ones may be 5, 10, 15, 20, which changes as things go on. So the scenario I mentioned right at the beginning before I brought the camera on, that's going to be even higher budget call. So let's say your budget's $300. Well, that call is going to take 150 of it right there. While you have no units available as a call taker, you're going to take a call for a tire change on the interstate. Someone needs to change the tire. Traffic's flying by too fast. They just don't feel safe doing it. They need some kind of help with traffic. That call is going to take around 10 bucks because it's not that big a deal. You can certainly be understanding of them. Like, yeah, that's an issue. You need to change your tire and whatnot. Um, you have great customer service. You let them know, hey, it's probably going to be a while. Um, they're on an emergency call. Fine. That call went good. Your next one is that barking dog I was talking about. This caller immediately is upset that there's a dog barking, and they've called about it 15 times before within the past 15 years, and they want it taken care of now. Still, not that bad. You still have plenty of your budget left. I mean, you've only spent, let's see, We said 150, so we've only spent $160 out of our $300 budget. Not an issue, right? Well, immediately when they get on the phone, you're trying to get an address and everything. They're constantly picking and picking, and you let them know, hey, it's probably going to be a while, or you ask them, have they already made contact with the ACO? You're trying to be nice. Hey, have you already made contact with the animal control agency during the day? And that's when they said, well, I'm not calling during the day. I'm calling right now. Okay. Well, let's take another $10 from that. So the call itself was already $10. So there's another 10. So that's $20. That's 180 out of our budget there. And what I'm getting at is every little thing that picks, or you just had to listen to someone lose someone very important to them. And now this caller is berating your very existence. The police never help. All they do is generate revenue. And then let's say even after that you take another heavy call. You're depleting your budget so fast. So by the end of your budget, you get another call back from the dude with the barking dog. It's been an hour and a half. Why is no one here? Why is no one taking care of it? I'm about to go take care of it myself. And that's when you may not be the nicest person in the world. Okay. Any good dispatcher is still going to be professional. They're still going to handle the call. It's just not always going to be customer service centered, if that makes sense. They're not going to go out of their way to make sure this person is happy or de escalated or the issue is resolved. They are going to make sure that the call is handled, it's put in to the queue of things, and eventually an officer will get out to it. But they weren't as nice as they could have been. And then because, not every administration is like this, but because admin wasn't there that night, because they didn't deal with the call directly, because they didn't deal with this person directly, this person went ahead and made a complaint on you. So the next day, while you're trying to sleep, because you work night shift, but admin's only there during the day, you're going to get a call right at noon. Right, and that is literally your midnight. That is your midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. You're gonna get a call from admin saying, "Hey, I need you to come in and talk about this call." So you go in, you have a talk about it, and you think everything went fine, and you say, "I don't think there's anything I could have changed." I had a heavy call. I was just dealing with that, so I wasn't as nice as I normally would have been, but I still handled the call. Well, we need to think about this is admin talking. Well, we need to think about customer service. The people that call in are our customers, and great. They didn't have to listen, see, deal with everything that you you know the responders did. But you're never going to get that across to people. It's never going to sink in, and that's what I want it to do. That's the goal of this, is to try and get it to sink in a little more people. So now you've got your supervisor has called you in at your midnight. You're dog tired. You just dealt with a heavy call. You need to decompress and compartmentalize that in a healthy way, but your whole process got interrupted at this point. And then now you're worried about, am I going to get written up for this? Like, am I seriously going to get in trouble for this? Did I do everything right? Why am I getting in trouble for it? And things escalate from there. Imagine then after that, you're like, okay, I'm gonna work on what I can work on. That didn't go like I planned. I'll go back home. I'll get some sleep and get up and deal with it in a healthy way. Then when you wake up, you decide to check social media, as we all do, and the caller from last night has posted you on the local rants page for whatever town you're in, has posted your name, has found your profile picture and posted your picture, and people are on his side. They are upset that you would not be nice and that you did not take care of that barking dog. So imagine you've just dealt with all of that and now you're getting public backlash. Not only does that affect your emotions, but it affects truly your physical safety because not everyone in this world has the most stable mental capacities. We see evidence of that every single day. So now your face, your name, your family's names are out there. If someone knows how to use the appraisal district website, guess what? They have your address. They know where you live. They know where your family lives. And that is something that I think needs to, in the age of cancel culture, it can get rough. Because if you're not in the best agency and you don't have an agency that'll back you up, which I haven't, luckily, I haven't seen this much lately, and definitely not in certain towns and stuff. But if you don't have the best agency that you work for, they're going to try and mitigate their risk. So once they see that the public is absolutely outraged at whatever you've done, no matter how minor it might be, they are going to try and mitigate their risk and find a way to get rid of you or write you up or have some kind of action against you to where they can say, no, we did our job. Keep your focus on the person that actually did it. And it just compounds things because now you're thinking your job is at risk when you already have a safety risk to your family and people you love. And now you're being blasted. You thought you were a good person, but now you're questioning that. It, things like that compound, they expand exponentially. So we we need to try and figure out how do we fix this issue on both sides of the road here. Yes, as a first responder, you should have some level of emotional control to be able to compartmentalize and deal with these things in a healthy way. Um, Stay off of social media, go do something you love, things like that. Now, I can see where, I've never been blasted on social media or anything. A lot of people haven't. But I can see where when people do have that happen, it's just going to make the issue of being able to compartmentalize or deal with it in a healthy way a lot worse because let's say your decompression is you like to go down to your local sports complex and play some basketball, hockey, whatever your choice is there. But you like to go to the local sports complex and decompress that way. Well, now your face is on social media. Now it's been reacted to by millions of people. Now you run the risk of when you go to that sports complex, someone is going to recognize you, um, try and badmouth you, make sure you can't decompress because your feelings don't matter because you did something bad. Um, and that is the reality of cancel culture today. So you can't escape wherever you're trying to escape. So I can see where, if that situation happens, how some of these guys really, at that point, they really go off the deep end. They turn to drugs, alcohol, they turn to self exit, self harm, things like that. So you got to learn how to deal with it in a healthy way from a first responder perspective. From a civilian perspective, like I said, we need to learn a lot more about grace, empathy, and understanding that humans are humans. Because let's take the first responder aspect out of it. I saw a video the other day where someone not reported, recorded a postal worker crying. A lot of the comments were mentioning how, well, she's already being recorded 24/7 by her, security cameras. Why is she so upset? Yeah, who knows what that postal worker was going through, right? Nobody knows because nobody knows her personal life like she does, or like even some of her family might. But some random person recording doesn't know if they just had a loved one that's super close to them pass, and we can't choose when emotion hits us. Sometimes we got to let it out. And if you're the only one working, like this postal worker was, she was the only one there at the location at the time. You can't just tell your line of 30 people, "Hey, sorry, I need to go to the back room and cry real quick." You try and pull it together, you try and hold it, you let a tear out or two, but then you have this person recording you. No, it's not illegal. It most certainly is not illegal to record in public spaces. I want you to understand that. I want you to understand your rights. However, that is extremely unempathetic and disrespectful because you don't know what they're going through. Let's say something extremely traumatic happens to you or you lose a family member. Should I show up to the funeral home and record you? It's a public space. I mean, yes, you can ask me to leave because it is a private property, but you're still in a publicly accessible area. So I can come there and record if I want to. Once I'm told to leave, I'll leave. No, because that's extremely unempathetic and disrespectful. So, as a society, we need to learn to be more empathetic and respectful towards people in general, right? I'm not saying don't call out injustices and don't call out and record things that shouldn't happen. Um, just understand that sometimes people can go off the deep end on that. So that's something that, you know, like I said, you got to keep in mind of your budget. As a first responder, keep in mind of your budget. Know that someone that's been there for 2 years is probably going to have that $300 or less budget. Someone that's been there 20 or 30 years is probably going to have a $500 budget or more with your empathy. Now, here's something to understand: someone with a $500 budget is also going to be more closed off. The empathy they hand out is also going to be much less. You may have a serious issue happening in what emergency you called for, but the person that's been there 20 years has ran their budget dry so many times. Now they're going to be stingy with it. Now, even though it's a serious issue to you, they can only afford to give you $20 because I can't spend any more on it because I know I'm gonna have something else later that I might need to use more budget on. I'm gonna be more conservative with my budget. I'm gonna be more safeguarded to that. So, and that's what we call sometimes jaded or cold. And sometimes when you deal with someone like that, it's not because that's just their personality, because they've dealt with it so many times and they've been burnt and hurt and ridiculed so many times. Sorry, all I can spare is $20. I'll handle your issue and I'm sorry you're going through that, but I need this information for the report. They're cold. And it's just how it is because they have to be. They have to guard themselves for that situation. So that's a danger when you get into that, you get into burnout, but then with the people that aren't as experienced or have a high call load and a lot of serious calls, you're going to go into debt really quick on that emotional budget. And it's something that as a whole needs to be worked on. Mental health in this country is not like it used to be. It's not where it should be, and it's just the reality of it. We really need to bring back mental health in a real way in this country for multiple things. You're having a lot more of people on an autism type spectrum that need assistance. In that way, you have a lot of people with more psychological issues, whether that's drug induced or not. That's still psychological issues that could be helped, possibly with a therapist psychiatrist. Um, I think another thing we need is there's still a stigma in first responders of seeing a therapist or getting help in that way. Number one, there's the stigma behind it, where some departments will still put you on leave if they feel like you're not mentally capable. Because the moment you see a therapist, you're not mentally capable. Um, so that's something that needs to be worked on in the culture of first responders is understand that when someone's trying to get help, they're trying not to be the burnout person that works there for 40 years, is extremely burnt out. And the moment they retire, they end up taking their lives because they just don't know what to do anymore. That's something we need to solve. Things like that do happen all the time. It's something, and it's statistics that really aren't tracked. There are tracked statistics if you are currently in a first responder role, those things are tracked. Now, after you retire, they're not really tracked or talked about that much whenever something like that happens. But it is a real thing that after people retire, sometimes they just don't know what to do for themselves, so they decide to go that route. I'm rambling on. I need to
Sorry
get more
about that, guys.
structured. I'm back. I wanted to grab some headphones so that way we could watch a few videos together, kind of explain what I'm talking about, and the fact that people have lost any ability for conversation, critical thinking, or awareness, empathy, any of that. So, this video I am going to show you here in a second is going to be from a TikTok. And the context behind this is there is a um, bar in Louisiana called the Sports Drink that they confronted some officers outside of their business thinking that they were ICE. And in thinking they were ICE, they're filming them, they're filming the license plate, they're showing their faces, um, they're putting them on blast. Turns out these officers are from an Internet Crimes Against Children task force. They were there to catch predators. Filming this, putting it on live, any of that, when you do that, you're putting these officers at risk, you're putting their operation at risk, you're messing with their stuff, right? And these guys are here to catch predators. And the filmers are so arrogant as to even say there's no predators in this town at noon on a Wednesday. Yeah, no, predators are all over all the time. They will drive 5 states away to meet a child, right? It happens all the time. So that's what they're there to do. But they're just putting them on blast.
We're not with ICE.
Cool.
We know you are.
So ICE, Border Patrol,
No, we're not ICE.
Louisiana.
Internet crimes against children. We hunt online predators.
Oh yeah, cool.
I don't really buy that, so thanks.
Yeah.
They have what?
Online predators with all of you in tinted windows.
We don't respect whatever you do.
Well, we hunt child predators. So.
Right.
We don't believe you.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
They're not at Bromart at noon on a Wednesday.
in tinted
Friday.
windows.
You'll see the article tomorrow.
Okay, cool.
You'll see it too.
Bye.
Yeah, and I've got both licenses.
Stupid
Child
people.
predators.
So you see here, this is the kind of things they deal with. They're being berated, they're being filmed.
Full face on the internet. That's embarrassing. You're embarrassed of your job.
See? They're saying they don't believe them, they don't respect anything they do, and that's the reality of what these officers deal with every single time they go to a call. I mean, it's getting to the point that it's every single call almost that they're having to deal with stuff like this. This next one is going to be one where mainly I was struck by a lot of the comments in this one, and the fact that people were saying never trust cops, never go outside, even if they say they're there to take a report. Let me tell you what's going to happen in a small town if you do this. If an officer sees that your vehicle's been struck or that something is wrong with your house and they want to see, like, hey, do you want to report on this? And they're trying to get you to come outside to look at the damage to see if you want to take a report. They're just trying to take a report for you so you can take it to your insurance or whoever. And if you're unwilling to do that, they're going to say, you know what? I'll fine. Clear no report. I'm going to put it in the call notes that you refused any kind of report. And so when you go outside and actually see it the next morning and you want to call up and make a report, it's not going to happen because they already tried to take the report. You said no. Keep that in mind if you're in a situation like this. Now, if you're in a situation where police officers are knocking at your door and you fear you have a warrant and they're trying to trick you to come outside, what are you doing? Like what are you actually doing? Because either you have a warrant and they're going to bust in, guns blazing and cause property damage, and you're going to complain about that because they caused property damage, or all I did was raise a gun to the intruder in my house. And so so many things that could go wrong, but you would complain about it or protest about it. But whenever they do something like this, like, "Hey, come outside," and if if you have a warrant, that's probably your best outcome is going outside. Yeah, you got me. Hook me up. Why really try and evade that much, right? What they're probably trying to do if they're there for a warrant and trying to get them to come outside to trick them, they're trying to make sure that this situation goes as smoothly as possible by getting you to come out and just basically hook you up right then and there. With the amount of officers, it could be that type of situation that we're about to see. Because I'm seeing one, two, three officers. There's probably more around the area. The situation that they're describing, it could be the situation they're describing, or it could be them they're trying to trick them to come outside so they can hook them up on a warrant. It is what it is. Because the situation they're describing is that they're saying, hey, you need to come to the door. It looks like a round possibly went through one of your windows. If you want to come look at it, see what room it went into. Because the guy's going to bring up the fact that, oh, well, if you don't know what room it's to, then how do you even know it's struck? Well, the officer states clearly, look, dude, I don't know the inside of your house. I just know that one of these outside windows right here has a round through it. That I don't know the inside of your house. I don't know if that's the kitchen. I don't know if that's the bedroom. I don't know if that's a bathroom. I don't know what that is. But here we go.
Looks like your window was struck by a round.
What window? Where at?
I don't know. It's not my house. I don't know the windows. Come out here and I can show you.
So how do you know that a window's been struck if you don't know?
If you come out here, I can show you.
I don't have to come out for I'm in a bed. What the 5:50 in the morning?
We're in a
So,
situation where either
What are y'all doing?
see, that's what I'm talking about. That people are constantly gonna just not approve of anything officers do, whether they try and de-escalate or get him out there without any kind of weapons, or if they're truly there to trick him, or you know what? If I were these officers and I was there actually looking into a round that struck a window, I believe whenever that dude called back in the morning, I'd make sure I had the call notes in there saying he refused to make contact, refused to take a report. See, okay, here's a comment about entrapment. Now, here's a thing for a lot of people to remember. Entrapment specifically. We're going off the rails here, but happy holidays. We're just gonna have fun making this content, okay? Entrapment specifically, which is illegal, by the way, is where you are provided the means and the tools to commit a crime and coerced to commit that crime. If, like bait cars, people try and say that's entrapment all the time. No, the person just took the car. The officer wasn't there saying, there wasn't an undercover officer that walked up to the person and said, hey, you should take that car. That's entrapment. Having the means and the tools plus the motivation. Because then it could be construed, well, they wouldn't have, stolen that car unless, they said, hey, you should go steal that car. That is entrapment, which is
just like
Oh.
all
What are y'all
which
doing?
is
It look-
illegal, right? Let's see. Yeah, everybody's saying basically they're definitely just trying to get you outside. Don't talk to them, don't go outside, don't answer the door. And people just generally just don't they don't seem to grasp the situation. Another one I've seen recently is there was some videos
like
talking
your window-
about
just like
What are y'all doing?
Oop, hold on. I don't think I saved it though. A video where people were getting into the details of qualified immunity. Here's something you guys need to know. And this is for you to know like if your rights are being violated as well, right? It goes both ways on this. Qualified immunity does not cover a police officer if they are violating your rights. If your rights have legitimately been violated, qualified immunity does not cover that. Qualified immunity only covers if the officer is doing everything within that person's rights, um, reasonably within policy, and they can say that they were trying to act in the best interest of party A, B, or C, right? Qualified immunity just protects that police officer's personal assets and family assets from being taken by people in court, because we all know judges aren't perfect either, right? There are some judges in this world that don't like officers, or they're in an elected judge position, and you may have elected a sovereign citizen that believes nobody should be in trouble for anything and we should govern ourselves. Which I'll get into that. That's a whole different fallacy there. So it only covers them within that set parameter, and it's to protect them from being just completely torn apart by frivolous lawsuits, right? Because let's also say that this officer, like without a doubt, video evidence, everything is perfectly, like everything was great on the officer's side of things. Like it clearly shows the officer did exactly what they were supposed to do. Here's the deal: if you don't have qualified immunity, people could still sue them because they believe something bad happened. Yes, they're going to spend their money in court as well, but then the officer has to pay for the court. If you have 100 people lining up for court for this officer, even though everything's on video, like we're just assuming this is a what if scenario, the officer always did everything 100% correct and right and was nice to people and all of that. But then all these people just really don't like that they got a ticket or that they got arrested for something or whatever the case is. And that officer has to pay for every single one of those lawsuits out of pocket. They have to pay court fees. They have to pay for their personal defense and personal lawyer. Um, th- th- that officer's going to be bankrupt and not going to have a house or a family. Or so, what would be the point of ever being a police officer at that point, right? So, qualified immunity is only for those type of situations, and the fact that the officer cannot be personally sued. Now, like I said, that is if they were doing everything correctly and within that person's rights. They did violate that person's rights. First of all, qualified immunity does not count at that point. Sue them for everything they have, right? Because violating rights is never a good thing to do. Um, you could say, "Oh, maybe he was having a bad day." You don't. You might be a little more emotional or cold or rude on a bad day. You're not going to violate someone's rights on a bad day. Okay. Um, but yeah, that's how qualified immunity works, and all of these things just go back into how that emotional budget gets spent real quick. Because if you have a situation like that where qualified immunity was no longer a thing, that emotional budget is out the window. You'd have people burning out even more than they already are, and that's the big thing is people need to realize that um, first responders. There's not enough first responders in the world. There's not. Uh, every department that I know of is short staffed. That's 911, police. Fire departments usually do pretty well, usually, except for in huge cities. And then EMS is always understaffed. I mean, it's a thing to where there's such a high turnover and burnout and health hazards and things like that, where people there's never enough. And so then you've got people working overtime, which is taking even more from their empathy budget, as we've talked about earlier. It drains more out of them. They don't get any help. not only that, but then they're also running the calls ragged, right? There's always going to be a situation where you're going to have more calls than officers, and that's even if you were to get the max amount of officers that any city budget would allow, kind of thing. You're always going to be pushed to the edge of what you can cover. That's also something people need to realize. I've saw some comments on some other videos and things where, you know, people mention that cops are only there to bring in revenue, and they never do their jobs, and they're always 45 minutes late, or they don't show up to calls. Uh, One anecdotal one was talking about how their sister had had their house burglarized, and took the officers 45 minutes to get there. Depending on the size of the town, that's a really good response time. And people were sitting there asking, questions in the comments like, okay, was the person that like was burglarizing the place, were they there at the same time your sister was there? That changes things. Context is key in all of these situations. If you call and your house has already been burglarized, don't touch anything that detectives might possibly get prints off of or anything. Um, don't tamper with stuff, don't start cleaning up, but realize that if there's nobody there actively uh, causing a threat to you or your family, it might take a little bit, because we might have just had that call where a 15-year-old is no longer with us, or we might have that major wreck where 15 different people were ejected from the party bus. You know, things happen, and there is a priority to things. We try and take care of things where people are hurt the quickest, and then move on down from that direction, right? The barking dog is going to be the absolute last thing we get to. That's just how it is. And if another, let's say the barking dog is the only call, if we get a 911 call that's a high priority, guess what? Hey, disregard that barking dog. Head on over to this location for this major call. Or let's say you've already made the officer's already made it to that barking dog call. Hey, you need to pull off that call and go to this emergency one. That's just the reality of things. And people need to have the maturity to realize that. Also, a thing I wish people would do more is, if you feel like things need to change in the service, which there's certainly changes that need to be made, right? Nobody's going to argue that, not even officers. Officers are going to be like, yeah, there's some things that need to change in different areas and things, because here's another thing people need to have a full context of. Not every department is the same. They're all going to have different policies. They're going to have different people hired there. Just because one department is bad doesn't mean all of them are bad. We can't go around making generalizations about anything and everything. But there's most certainly departments that need some work and need to be probably started back from the ground up. And here's the thing about police as a whole: you can't do that. You can't take it like a lot of people want to do. You can't just get rid of everybody and then start from the ground up, because the amount of chaos that would happen in between all of that is just insane. Most people do, when you ask them why they became a police officer, they want to help people, they want to catch bad guys, whatever. And that's the dream of a lot of police officers that started in this career. Uh, even people now, a lot of people now are getting, which I'm glad they are, because it might help us focus more on it than we have been able to in the past. There's probably more task force and divisions that can be made up from this, but a lot of people nowadays are really concerned about like the child predator situation and how it's never going to go away, and it's really not. And that's the thing that's going to be constant. That's why if you work in a first responder field, you're always going to have job security, because if everybody had common sense and everybody was a good person, then we wouldn't have a job. So just some things, in context there that people don't realize, and sovereign citizens are some of the worst about, their rights, and they're not really citizens, and they're traveling, they're not driving, blah, blah, blah. and I don't know kind of if it's a lack in brain chemistry or if they need to go see a therapist like we do, and they'll basically say that their rights can't be violated, and my train of thought just left the building. They think that basically people should be able to govern themselves based off of Constitution and Bill of Rights. Well, here's the thing with that, and this is what I would try and explain to people working in the code department. This is one of the this is where it clicked for me. Is that's all fine and dandy, but number one, you're gonna have lawlessness, and then you're gonna get into situations where if you do take things into your own hands, how can you tell they actually did something wrong? If you get right back into needing police to investigate and check out things and put things on body camera and take pictures and get everybody's side of the story, because you get back into that foul. If I say that someone over here to my right did something bad, and so I get to, you know, take them out now, and I do that, who's, and I never get their side of the story, and I just say, hey guys, this person did something bad, and I take them out. Who's to say that I wasn't lying? Where is the accountability at that point? That's why officers go out, and when they get calls of things, they have to investigate it. They have to check into it. That's a lot of thing. People say, "Why are you even stopping out with me? Why are you even talking to me? I don't want to have this conversation. I don't want to talk to you at all." It's the officer's job. If someone calls 911 and says something, it doesn't mean that it's true, but it says they have to check into it. And I'm sorry if someone says that this person, you know, if I were an officer and someone says, "Hey, this person assaulted me," and I go out to check on it, and you're the person they're saying that assaulted them. If I talk to you and you're like, "No, that I'm not really sure where they got that. That didn't happen," and you're calm, cool, and collected, you're forthright with all of your information, you give me your ID, there's no footage from the parking lot or anything on it. There's no footage from the other person. Guess what? I don't see that you're a violent person. Now, if I go up, "Hey, my name's Officer so and so, I'm here to investigate," and you're immediately aggressive and yelling and don't want to talk to me and say you don't have to give me your ID and this is ridiculous and you're just profiling, and you fly off the absolute handle, guess what? In my mind, and any rational person's mind should go to this place, in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, that person was calm. You're immediately aggressive and yelling at me and coming at me and saying all of this and recording me and um, just doing the most. Yeah, I could see you assaulting somebody. And so that's the thing. You have to, if we had a society that governed themselves, there would be no accountability and no investigation. It would just be lawlessness, right? And another thing to mention behind like governing yourselves and everything, and the reason we have a lot of rules, this isn't to say that every law is God's gift to humanity and the greatest law since sliced bread became a thing. There's bad laws. There's laws that need to be updated. There's laws that need to go away. There's laws that need to be added. But there's two aspects to it. You have the accountability aspect, wherein that, and accountability and liability, especially with a sue happy world that we live in, or I mean, it's really only a United States thing where people are super sue happy. But the McDonald's incident is one I bring up all the time. I'm sure a lot of you remember the incident back in the day where the lady had hot McDonald's coffee spilled on her and sued the restaurant. Yes, she got a ton of money from that, but one of the other requirements was that on the cups they have to put a warning, this is extremely hot, because in reality the McDonald's heaters were set to an extremely hot temperature that is beyond what it has to be, right? They just, I get it, they want their coffee hot and everything, but now they have to put that warning label on there to warn people like, hey, this is extremely hot, so be careful. And that was kind of the requirement, is that's something bad happens, someone sued, so now there's a policy or law on it, right? Um, Same thing happens with laws a lot of times when they're made. It's, when the first, no, that's a bad example because there's always been thefts. When something happens for the first time, they have to look at it and be like, We can all agree this is a bad thing, right? This shouldn't happen. So, what is the punishment for it? What is the law that we're going to put in place to try and prevent this from happening? To where it's not technically legal, where we can punish them for it if it happens again. And that's how laws were made. Laws were also made in the fact that, yes, you absolutely have rights. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights is a wonderful thing in the United States, right? It is something that I'm proud is there. Keep in mind that, people always say, "Oh, that trumps everything. That's the end all be all. That's the document. If it's not in that, then it's fine to do." Here's the issue with that, and I've brought this up to people before. In the Bill of Rights, what is the preamble of the Bill of Rights? It's basically that they hold those truths to be self-evident, and that those are the rights that every living, breathing human has, no matter creed, race, nothing. That is the rights that everyone should have, and the rights that every person on earth should have, according to the founders of this document, are the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Life, that's an obvious one. Everyone deserves to live. Liberty is the ability to exercise free will. And the pursuit of happiness would be your ability to live your life as you see fit and be happy. Here's where we get into laws. It also says that you should not violate those rights of any human. You should not violate those. And laws were created to try and protect those rights. Because if I steal from you, that's reducing your liberty in pursuit of happiness because I took something from you. That shouldn't be right. If I do something to you or assault you, that's attempting to take the right of your life. Right? So, and that's how laws work because, even when you get into things that seem punitive, like city ordinance and everything, that's why there's a lot of things that go into it. We're not going to get into the structure of government, but basically, the federal law outlines things. State law can be more strict than federal law, but it can't be more lenient than federal law, technically. And then city ordinance can be stricter than state law, but it can't be more lenient than state law. And also, when you live within a city limits, you're agreeing to their policies and procedures, which is the code. That's you're making that agreement when you move into that municipality. Hate to break it to you, that's how it is. But I would mention to people, there was one time I had written someone a citation basically for having a pool that was like partially drained, but it was all stagnant, had a bunch of algae and things growing in it, and it had just been sitting there for way too long. Well, the neighbors are complaining about it because they noticed an uptick in mosquitoes, which the city does, spray for mosquitoes and things, but then they had to quit because then people were complaining about chemtrails and everything. It gets way into the weeds on things, right? But that was one of the things they brought up is like, I have rights, the city ordinance doesn't mean anything. What harm is if I don't want to take care of my pool, that's my business. True up to a point. You don't have to take care of your pool, but if you don't want to take care of your pool, you have to make sure that it's not hindering someone else's, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I would venture to guess that a habitat of mosquitoes is not conducive to your neighbor's pursuit of happiness, right? So you do have to take steps to mitigate that risk to other people because at that point you do harm other people. And it didn't work very well. That shocker. But that's the idea behind it, is that you need to keep in mind everybody's rights and not violate that for others. And that's why laws are in place. I've gone way off into the weeds. I've gone into 17 different topics today, but I do appreciate you joining. I have a new series on YouTube about 911 Mythbusters, taking myths about 911, such as you can always track, people's phones and things like that, and just explaining some things kind of in the same format I'm doing here. But it's going to be on my YouTube channel, and it'll be some short videos, 5, 10, sometimes even 15 minutes long. But we really want to dive more into that. We're going to try and have those episodes come out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Um, Again, I do appreciate you being here. Next week, don't expect an episode. It will be the holidays, and I hope you stay safe. I hope you bring some empathy to your table and some grace for your fellow humans in the world. Not just first responders, everybody. We need more of that in this world. And I'm sorry I got off in the weeds today and went way off, but that's the original topic, is empathy burnout. And understand sometimes when a first responder or somebody's rude or cold, it's not necessarily for the reason you think, and they're not just trying to be a jerk. But if you've enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Please become a follower on whenever you see me streaming. Multiple platforms, all the same name everywhere, Fungus Among Us 19. Or you can find me on Spotify as Dialing Up the Details podcast. Again, hope you enjoyed. Hope it is entertaining and informative. And in between now and the next time, if you have to dial 911, please remember to dial up those details.